He stood on that stage, in front of the entire world, and he said nothing. 4 weeks earlier, a microphone nobody could explain picked up a slur screamed from 40 rows back, aimed directly at 2 black men standing in the spotlight. The BBC had a 2-hour delay. They still let it air. And then, exactly 28 days later, that same man walked to that same kind of stage, and they gave him the most celebrated prize in cinema. So here's the question that nobody in Hollywood wants to answer. Was that a coincidence? Or is there a pattern so old, so deeply buried in this industry that we've been watching it our whole lives without ever seeing it clearly? Michael B. Jordan. By 2026, he is one of the most recognized actors on the planet. Creed, Black Panther, Without Remorse. A career built on discipline, intensity, and a refusal to play it small. He doesn't court controversy. He doesn't make headlines for the wrong reasons. He shows up, he performs, he delivers. And his film Sinners, a bold, original piece of cinema, earned him his first Oscar nomination. His very first. Standing beside him at the BAFTAs was Delroy Lindo, a veteran, a legend of the craft. Decades of serious work, serious roles, the kind of actor that other actors study. These are not small names. These are not new faces. These are men who have built careers brick by brick, performance by performance. And they were both on that stage in London, representing a film they were proud of. That's the setup. Now here's what happened next. The BAFTAs were not streamed live. That matters. What that means is that producers saw exactly what happened in that room before the broadcast went out to the world. They had time. They had the footage. They had a choice. And somewhere in the editing process, somebody looked at a moment where a microphone, pointed in a direction nobody could fully explain, caught a racial slur being shouted in the direction of 2 black men on stage, and they decided to keep it in. They decided that the moment should go on worldwide television. The man who shouted it has Tourette's syndrome. That became the official explanation, the media angle, the thing that made the story manageable. And of course, neither Michael nor Delroy could say a word about the man who did it. Because what do you say? What are you allowed to say? The BBC called it a serious mistake. BAFTA apologized. Everyone moved on. Delroy Lindo spoke up. He said publicly that he wished someone from the organization had reached out afterward. That acknowledgement would have meant something. Michael B. Jordan said nothing. Not a single public word. And that silence has its own weight. Whether it was grace, strategy, or something heavier than both, he carried that moment and kept moving. But here's the part that makes this more than just an unfortunate incident. 4 weeks later, same man, same movie, same industry, and they gave him the Oscar. But that's not where this story starts. Because comedian and cultural commentator Katt Williams had already given people a framework for exactly this kind of moment. He said it plainly. When you're inside an industry built entirely on performance and illusion, when every moment is calculated and every image is managed, the things that look like accidents usually aren't. Somebody always pays. Somebody always benefits. And the people in the building know exactly which one you are before the cameras start rolling. Now, some people heard Katt say that and called it conspiracy thinking. Too dramatic. Too suspicious. Too much. But then Will Smith happened. The 2022 Oscars. A joke. A reaction. A slap heard around the world. And then, less than 1 hour later, Will Smith stood at that same podium, holding his first Oscar ever, tears running down his face, giving a speech about purpose and calling. Think about that timing. He was humiliated on that stage, publicly, globally, indelibly. And then he was elevated on that same stage, on the same night, within the same broadcast. Katt's point wasn't that the slap was fake. His point was that the structure of what happened, the humiliation followed immediately by the reward, followed a pattern. A pattern that serves the machine more than it serves the man. And look at what came after. Will Smith was banned from the Oscars for 10 years. His film Emancipation was ignored. His career slowed to something unrecognizable from what it was. Chris Rock, the man who was on the receiving end of that slap, the man who stood there humiliated in front of millions, his career exploded. Netflix special, sold out arenas, a comeback nobody predicted. Somebody paid, somebody benefited. Same script, two different actors. But here's the detail almost everyone missed. This isn't a new script. This has been running for almost a century. Hattie McDaniel becomes the first black person to ever win an Academy Award.
The best performance of an actress in supporting roles during 1939 to Hattie McDaniel.
Best Supporting Actress, Gone with the Wind. She played a maid, a performance that made much of the black community deeply uncomfortable, a role built on a stereotype that Hollywood had already been packaging and selling for decades. And on that historic night, the night she made history, Hattie McDaniel was not allowed to sit at the main table with her castmates and colleagues. She sat at a segregated table in the back of the room, alone in a crowd of people celebrating her. She won the award. She couldn't sit with the people she won it with. That's not irony. That's a message. Move forward to 2002. Halle Berry wins Best Actress in a Leading Role. She is still, to this day, over 2 decades later, the only black woman to have ever won that award in Oscar history. One woman in almost 100 years. And what did she win it for? Monsters Ball, a film in which her character falls in love with a white prison guard who participated in the execution of her black husband. She broke a barrier. That's real. But look at what the door they let her through was made of. Then there's Monique. She won the Oscar for Precious in 2010, a devastating performance. A role that required her to go to some of the darkest places a performer can go. And when award season came, and the studios expected her to campaign, to travel and smile and play the game for free, she said no. She said her performance should be enough. And they blackballed her. She won the Oscar, and the industry closed around her like water over a stone. She had done nothing wrong contractually. There was no legal leverage. They just decided she was no longer useful. And Lupita Nyong'o. She won Best Supporting Actress in 2014 for 12 Years a Slave, a film about bondage, survival, and the violence of American history. And when she came out the other side of that win, when she was waiting for the doors that a gold statue is supposed to open, the offers she received were for more slave roles. Another plantation, another ship, another story of suffering. She said it herself. She won the Academy Award, and the industry handed her more chains. And that's where things get darker. Jennifer Hudson, Best Supporting Actress, 2007, Dreamgirls. Months before that ceremony, her mother, her brother, and her 7-year-old nephew were murdered. She went through the trial. She testified. She buried her family. And she still showed up. The industry rewarded her, and the circumstances surrounding that reward were some of the most brutal a human being can experience. Whether that connection means something beyond tragedy is a question people are still asking. Here's what the pattern actually reveals when you pull back far enough. It's not just about who wins, it's about what they win for. Look at the categories where black excellence has consistently been shut out. Best Director. In the entire history of the Academy Awards, nearly 100 years, No black person has ever won Best Director. Not once. Best Actress in a Leading Role. One woman, one time, more than 20 years ago. Best Actor in a Leading Role. A handful across a century of cinema. The message underneath the silence of those categories is this: you can be in our stories. You can deliver our performances. You can make our films unforgettable. But you cannot control the narrative. You cannot sit in the chair where the world is built. That seat, the director's chair, the writer's room, the producing table, that's where power actually lives. And the award they're most willing to give? Supporting roles, slaves, maids, broken mothers, characters defined by their relationship to someone else's story. Katt Williams framed it simply: when the industry decides to cancel a black artist, you see one set of events unfold. When they decide to elevate one, you see another. And when they don't care about either, you see something else entirely. But what you almost never see is a black artist being elevated without having first absorbed something. A role that diminishes, a night that humiliates, a moment that costs. The humiliation and the elevation don't happen in spite of each other. They happen together. That's the ritual. Not in the supernatural sense, but in the structural sense. A system that extracts something before it rewards. That requires a performance of a particular kind of suffering before it offers a particular kind of recognition. Comment below. Do you think what happened to Michael B. Jordan at the BAFTAs was truly an accident? Or does the pattern go too deep for that?
Let's talk about what this really says about how Hollywood has always worked. This industry was built during an era of legal segregation. Hattie McDaniel's winning that Oscar in 1940 wasn't just a personal moment, it was a carefully managed image. A way for the industry to point to a name, a face, and a trophy and say, "Look how far we've come," while she sat alone at a table in the back of the room. The optics of progress have always been part of the product. And over the decades, the machinery got more sophisticated, but the structure stayed the same. Black talent has always been welcomed as a performer. Rarely is power. The stories that tend to win are stories of endurance, of surviving white spaces, of tragedy, of service, of suffering that makes the majority audience feel something: guilt, admiration, catharsis. And the artists who play those roles are rewarded for their willingness to inhabit that pain on screen. But the artists who push back, who refuse to campaign, who speak up about what was done to them, who try to own something, they tend to find the doors closing. Monique. Lupita is getting handed slave scripts. Will Smith's career is hitting a wall. And this is what Katt Williams was pointing at. Not just individual moments of unfairness, but logic. A logic that decides which black artists are useful, in what way, at what moment, and at what cost. The humiliation at the BAFTAs wasn't investigated with the same energy as a regular incident would be. A microphone picked up a slur from 40 rows back during a broadcast with a 2-hour delay. And the BBC's response was, "We're sorry, we made a mistake." And Michael B. Jordan had to stand there. Because what else do you do when the system closes around a moment like that and calls it an accident? You absorb it. You say nothing. And 4 weeks later, you hold a statue. Here is where the story lands. Michael B. Jordan's Oscar is real. His performance in Sinners is real. His talent is unquestionable. None of what Katt Williams suggests removes the achievement. But it asks a harder question underneath the achievement. What is the cost of entry? Hattie McDaniel paid with her dignity, sitting alone at the back of the room. Halle Berry paid with a role that required her to perform a particular kind of vulnerability
in a particular kind of story. Monique paid with her career because she refused to pay the price they were asking. Lupita paid with the offers that came after: more chains, more ships, and more suffering packaged for an award season audience. Will Smith paid with his legacy, his reputation, and his place in the room. And Michael B. Jordan, whatever happened in that London auditorium, whatever conversation did or didn't take place, whatever decision was made in an editing room about what the world would see, absorbed a moment publicly that no one in his position should have had to absorb. And then the same industry handed him gold. The machine keeps running. It was running in 1940. It was running in 2002. It ran through every moment we've talked about tonight. And it will be running the next time a name is called, a microphone catches something it shouldn't, and everyone apologizes while nobody changes anything. The question isn't whether Katt Williams is right about every detail. The question is whether the pattern is real, and the pattern has a very long paper trail. If the most celebrated night in cinema still can't fully separate the reward from the ritual, if the gold statue and the public wound keep arriving together, if a century of history keeps drawing the same shape, then what are we actually watching when we tune in every year? Are we watching artists be honored? Or are we watching a machine demonstrate, again, exactly who it allows to win, how, and at what price? That's the question Katt Williams put on the table. Michael B. Jordan's Oscar doesn't answer it. It deepens it.